Good afternoon. I'll first want to thank the City of New York School of Professional Studies for inviting me to present this session, this webinar. And I look forward to sharing a few insights about a particular topic in information technology. And hopefully you'll get out of it what you need as you kind of listen in and learn a little bit more about different perspectives on IT outsourcing. So again, thank you to the school and for the faculty and staff of the school for inviting me in. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Iggy Javellana. I work for Cerberus Operations and Advisory Company. We're a company within Cerberus Capital Management. I've been in the information technology industry, hate to say it, over 20 odd years, we'll just say that. It goes beyond 20 years, but it's good enough for me. And in various capacities, I started out in consulting. I have an industrial engineering background. So I know some of the students in this program are in data science. So I would just say I'm a frustrated industrial engineer that struggled through statistics classes. But I've been in the industry a long time. I've had various roles from IT project management to being a CIO of various size companies, running infrastructure teams, etc. I recently, prior to my role here at Cerberus, I ran an offshore IT center for a large U.S. retailer in Asia, so I have had both experiences of outsourcing both as a customer to a partner and also been on the other side of delivering outsourcing to, in this case, a captive client, but it has very similar properties in that manner. So thanks again for having me, and hopefully you'll pick up a few tips and things along the way with this presentation, and looking forward to maybe taking some of your questions towards the end of the presentation. So I'll go ahead and get started. Before I get into the first slide, I just wanted maybe to tee up the topic. IT outsourcing can obviously mean a lot of things to many people. So some of my examples, we'll focus on technology, but I think some of the learnings you can take to other outsourcing relationships, and not just have to be the word outsourcing directly, but just any partner relationship you may have where you're striking a long-term agreement and building a relationship with an external party to help you provide services to your company. So we'll focus on IT since that's what this program is about. That is my background. So hopefully you'll be able to get some tips from that, in as much I'll also be able to ask questions about things that pertain to technology, whether it be on the innovation side, the operations side, the infrastructure side, the security side, those things. So again, looking forward to this. So the way I want to tee this up is really at a point, right? So there's a point in time where you've just signed the outsourcing agreement. So we can go through a little bit on, how to develop an outsourcing business case and all those things. I'll touch a little bit on that in the presentation later. But right now I'm going to start with kind of in the continuum of things is you've just now signed an outsourcing agreement, a multi-year agreement, right? Now, whether you're the CIO, you're a leader in the organization that now has to participate in this outsourcing agreement, or you're an analyst where your team might be now split out from maybe internal employees, and now you have to work with teams that are not internal employees, but they may be part of the partners team. So different perspectives, right? Key number one, the question is now what, right? You got an email, you may have been called into a town hall, you may have been called into a kickoff that says we have just signed an outsourcing agreement with company X. My little photo here just says now you've got the tiger by the tail, right? You've just read, and in many cases, many of you don't, and maybe don't want to. But in some cases, you also need to learn about how to read a master services agreement. So what did you guys just agree to, right? And these multi-page master service agreements and all the exhibits that go with it, several hundred pages, there's a lot of stuff in there, right? So what I would just tell you, don't get overwhelmed by that. All those agreements and things have meaningful content, And your leaders or the people that you'll work with or yourselves will have to learn elements of the agreement and the statements of work underneath that. But again, don't get overwhelmed, but understand that at least you have something you can fall back on. All of a sudden now new faces and names have showed up in front of you. And the question is, what do I do now, right? New processes will be introduced or are being introduced on how to get work done across now your team and the partners team, right? And in certain cases, and in many cases, new cultures now are showing up. And cultures mean whether you're based in the States or Europe or you're based in Asia, your partner may be delivering services to you or assigning teams to you that are from different regions of the world and different time zones of the world. And that's all fair game. In fact, in my perspective, that's kind of where the fun begins, right? Is dealing with these things as they come across to you. So in the continuum of things, the agreement just got signed, and it's now time to move on and figure out, okay, now what do we do with this? The first thing that you should ask yourself is, because a lot of times the contracting process takes months, whether you started with an RFP, whether you started with trying to define what your needs are, right? The first thing you want to do really is remember why you did this, right? A lot of times we get caught up in the detail of, okay, what is my job going to happen? How am I going to tell my people what to do? My first advice to many of you is remember why you did this and what was in the business case. Convert it back to business value, right? Was it, we're doing this because we need to free up the internal staff to work on strategic projects, right? Was it process efficiency? Right? Maybe in delivering business value in terms of the way the company is moving forward, the organizations you join or that you're part of, making sure it translates, that you understand what processes. Is it because you're expanding into other markets? Is it because you're expanding into certain operations that you've not done before? Those things. So please take the time and really try to understand that. Was it because of customer service? Maybe the way you delivered services in the past was not so effective to your business partners, right? Was it operating expense? So not to get away from the topic, cost matters, financials matter, right? So understand what elements of why we did it from an operating perspective. Was it access to talent? I've been in many situations in outsourcing agreements where it was quicker to get access to really good talent by engaging a partner, right? So understand that. Was it because of access to talent? The other thing was it access to innovation? In many cases that I've been in is we were, I'll say, stuck with existing knowledge. And a lot of times these partnerships can bring additional innovation to you because those partners are doing predominantly maybe more front-end research, right, on new processes, whether it's in today's world, things like robotics, things like automation, and for many of you in the master's program, analytics, right? Those are all big emerging markets and industries and skills and techniques. So I just say reframe it, right? Make sure you understand before you start to jump into the weeds about why you did this. It could be a combination of the things above. It could be things not on this page. But take the time. If you're affected in one sort of manner, you're asked to lead a group, supposed to work with a team, ask these questions. They will really help you frame up and making sure it stays in front of you as you go down this journey. I've seen a lot of companies falter because they don't remember why they even did this agreement. We have examples of that all over the place. If you just read the paper or talk to even some of the third-party providers, you ask them, why didn't this work? So a lot of times what we do in the companies I work with, we keep this up front, and we always come back to why did we do this? Even a year later, 2 years later, we have to keep reminding ourselves as why did we do this? At the end of the day, it's also important because I'll talk about it later. It's also something to go back to your stakeholders that approved the deal, that are making the financial investment and the people investment to say, yes, we are meeting what we said we set out to do. So again, keep this in front of you. One of the things that I think people miss, and it's good for, and I'm taking this from a perspective of a company in which you just have engaged a partner, right? understand and take the time to learn and try to understand your provider's motivation, right? Now, a lot of people think, oh, the provider is just going to do exactly what we asked them to do in the statement of work that was signed. That is mostly true, but it's not all true. Understanding your provider's motivation helps you leverage both your relationship, asking the intelligent question, and more importantly, building a really strong relationship with your provider, right? On the surface, it's pretty easy, right? They want your business, right? If you went through an RFP process, they competed for your business. One, why do they want to do it? One is growth of their firm. Just like you, they want to grow. So getting a new client on board is critical to them. Revenue, obviously, they want to improve their financial position, and not just in the short term, but in the long term. So why is that important? It's because now you've signed a 3 to 5 year agreement, and it may have a lot of financial stipulations, but at the same time, those financial stipulations were negotiated, and understanding the negotiation position of your provider, it sometimes allows you some insight on where you, and I won't say the word leverage, but at least where you can at least work with them on how to get things accomplished. They want your brand in their portfolio. Providers really like to have a nice portfolio of companies so that when they go sell work to other clients, they can prove that clients like you, companies like you, have valued their partnership, right? They may want other business opportunities within your enterprise, right? So that's pretty typical. Providers are asked to acquire new customers and then grow their customers. So they'll always ask you, hey, you brought me in to do infrastructure, but can I also take your application services? And you need to just know that that's what they'll ask, but at the same time too, you need to keep them focused, right? My mantra is when that comes to me, they'll come to me and say, hey, we have infrastructure services with you. Can we also have your applications or your development or your security services? I will only allow them into those spaces if they've earned what they contracted to do initially. If their performance is good, their KPIs are good, if they're well accepted in the organization, your team, the internal team is working with them in a very strong partnership, will you let them into the other areas? Everything here is about proof, right? So understanding your provider's motivation. Career opportunities for their staff. Understanding that very well is because they obviously are trying to entertain and retain and grow their own staff. So you need to know that, you need to understand what that means, is because when you get into, especially many of these outsourcing agreements are predominantly people oriented. It's who they're assigning to your account, whether they be present in your facility or they're present in their delivery centers. Understanding how they do staffing is critical to understanding how to motivate, how to keep these people on track. And I'll come back to you later about different ways to do that. Taking it, and I'll just say this in a nice way, taking advantage of knowing that on how they grow their people and their organization. At the end of the day, just like any other organization, you want their best players working on your account or working on your behalf. So there's other things to really understand your provider's motivation. It's not all in the contract. It's not all in the people you work day to day with, but understanding their motivation, understanding what they value, whether it be their community, their people, their technology, it's critical to really understanding how they'll behave with you every single day. Okay. So again, we've just kicked off. Organization, there can be few thoughts on this, there can be a lot of thoughts on this. One of the things that, at least in my personal experience, as I've gone through various outsourcing arrangements, whether it's been me delivering the service or me purchasing the service, there's a couple of key tenets from my perspective that need to kind of stay, right? So if I look at this in this very simple chart, enterprise in this example is the company that acquired the service from the provider. I'll talk about the provider first. One is to really understand them and really build a strong relationship. Demand for executive leadership. In many of the examples and in many of the situations I've been in, we have direct line that your CIO, your Chief Technology Officer, your VP of Applications or Infrastructure should have direct line to top people within the organization. And I don't mean that purely just for escalation of issues. It's really trying to build a partnership. Understand the things I just said on the prior slide about understanding their motivation. Where is it important for them to grow so that they can provide you the services that you need. So executive leadership, if it's not there, look for it and demand it. On the provider side as well, as they bring great technical expertise, right? So just make sure that you vetted them, that you understand their technical acumen and those things, that they have reached back. Many of these organizations, especially the larger ones, the IBMs, Accentures, the Genpacts, the Cognizants, the Infosys, the HCLs, all those, they have great technical people and understanding that technical acumen reaches way back into their R&D and those things. So really, you can really challenge them and make sure that you have access, maybe not directly day to day, but you at least have access back to that pipeline of technical leadership. The provider should also be providing you process leadership. And I'm going to take a very simple view of the world. So it's like IT service management. They're ITIL certified. If they're doing development, they're SCI, CMM certified. But really lean on them on that, making sure that one of the reasons as we look at why you did this is maybe process efficiency, cost control, and process will really drive that. So again, lean on your provider to make sure they're bringing top-notch thought process, proven methodologies, in those things to your organization. So lean on them on that. I'm not saying not to question them, but really make sure that they are delivering that to you. On the enterprise side, and this is without being said, obviously, that's IT leadership. That's the top level of the IT organization, whether it be the CIO, CTO, the VPs and directors of various towers. That will obviously be critical. Some mistakes I've seen in the past is, let's just say it's an infrastructure outsourcing agreement. Normally what I've seen when I've walked into those that aren't going so well, it's the only one that feels ownership to the agreement is the VP of infrastructure or the director of infrastructure. So the only thing I'll point out here is that in large agreements like infrastructure service security, the whole IT leadership team has to be bought into the process and be part of the team that helps operate the agreement with that provider. So if it's purely an infrastructure services and the application leaders and development leaders are not there, that is a mistake because obviously from an IT perspective, they all need to be bought in. One of the things that I've seen also is that business and IT architecture, I've seen a lot of companies try to outsource everything to the provider, and the provider will say, yes, we do it all. One of the things you do not want to outsource, or the enterprise should continue to take leadership on, and that's what we will call the business and IT architecture. Yes, you can ask them for technical leadership in terms of development applications or development tools or robotic tools, but at the end of the day, the join between business knowledge and the IT architecture should stay within the enterprise. Again, it just goes back to their motivation. They don't know your business like you know your business, and that's really the key point behind this message. And the last thing I will just say here in the enterprise is IT business partners. IT business partners are the ones that deal every day with the rest of the organization. Again, I've seen in the past where they've tried to outsource that relationship. So trust, credibility are big challenges for the providers. And I don't mean that they can't do it, it just takes a longer time. So one of the things that I would just strongly suggest is IT business partnership, the liaison between the IT team and the functions, whether it be sales functions, manufacturing, R&D, those things should stay within the enterprise staff. Now, over time, you may slip it sideways, but I will tell you, just in my experiences, that's a role that should stay along with the enterprise. Kind of the core team, the day-to-day team, there's a term out there that's used called two in a box, right? So technical tower lead. So if I'm leading financial applications, I may have a technical tower lead with me with a provider that's also the financial applications lead. If I'm in infrastructure, it might be in storage, so I might have a storage person or storage architect or storage lead in the from the enterprise and one from the provider. So kind of a best practice is what we call two in a box on technical tower leads, to making sure that what's being delivered, how it's being delivered, how it's being sourced, both people are working side by side in delivering that service to the rest of the organization. Financials. Financials are always important because our stakeholders will always ask us, how are we doing? Are they performing and doing those things, right? So two in a box, your financial controller and IT and their financial folks should be going through it and making sure that what's being billed, where the fees are, and those things are clear to both parties. The last thing you want to do is get into a shouting match, which I've seen in organizations about cost and invoicing. And then, so I keep financials kind of up there to make sure that people are aware that it is also a financial relationship we have to keep healthy. KPI and reporting, I'll get a little bit into it later, but obviously making sure that with KPIs, key performance indicators, are measured on the same basis, and that they're what I will call making sure they're interpreted on the same basis. When we do these large agreements, whether they be managed as a service, even in some cases time and materials, it's delivery-based, it's time-based, it's capacity-based. People just need to understand on how these things are reported, and we all agree as we're looking at the reports every day that they're interpreted the same way. So if I call backlog with these 15 elements and the provider says backlog has 12 elements, you get off on an unhealthy foot, right? So KPI and reporting is critical to making sure the relationship and the delivery model stays succinct. The last one I'll just say, two in a box, is ITSM. So there's a general term for IT service management, whether it be ITIL for incident problem change, for service requests and things like that. So things that get done every day, making sure that those processes are aligned. Now, in this case, providers might provide most of the resources in this column, but ownership should still be adapted to what the business needs are. So having what we call two in a box and the IT service management piece, again, it's another healthy way to keep the relationship and the delivery model performing. Teaming. Under teaming, we can get into some of it, but these are just, again, some best practices. I'll start on the right side of the slide, called Cadence. Again, this is to keep everyone honest and keep the lines of communication wide open, right? So usually the tower leads and things like that will have weekly ops reviews to go over. I'll go over the data on the other side of the chart, but go over the KPIs, the SLAs, and the OLELAs. I'll explain what those are. If you guys don't know what those are, I'll explain those. And then monthly, the executive, so that executive top, the executive leadership, their technical leadership, your business partners meet monthly and go over operational and financial reviews. Is the work getting done? They say is the work getting done in the way we expected? Where are we exceeding? Where are we not exceeding? Right. So that's what you would do on a monthly, at a minimum on a monthly basis, is top leadership, like I say. But even if it's just infrastructure services from the provider, the applications, the security people, all should be as part of this review. No one's off the hook. Everyone is dependent upon each other. Quarterly business reviews. Quarterly business reviews are really more how are we doing, but really what is coming. And you should hear from both sides of that. The business should be explained to provider, here's how we're looking at things the next 6 to 12 months out. Whether are we acquiring someone, are we expanding, are we growing our product base, are we consolidating markets, Are we opening new branches? Those things should be shared, right? From the provider side, they should be sharing with you, here's the investments we're making, here's some new techniques and technology, some new innovation we think apply to you. Here's a exchange, right? Here's a networking ability for you to meet peers in your industry or in your technology stack. It's all about keeping that partnership healthy. And because you might find out that your partner are doing things that you may have not, I'll say, had not come out of R&D yet, but you might trigger things for you to partner on a different aspect of your organization. Again, those are critical. It builds the partnership, it keeps things healthy, and you can do a lot of trade-offs when you have that knowledge of what's going on 6 to 12 months out. On the other side, SLA, KPIs, and OLAs, we're all kind of used to those terms. So let's just look at how we use them in these types of relationships. SLA, service level agreements, they're really a lot of times what the business asks for, right? It's what the business expectation is, and in some cases, your CFO will ask, what are the financial expectations? SLAs have a tendency to have the financial penalties tied to them, right? So service level agreements are good, are actually, you will have them in your contracts, you should have them in your contracts, you will need to understand them because a lot of times that's what you have committed to the business, service level agreements. How quickly can I repair your laptop? How quickly can I open a store? If you're expanding and making sure you have technology in the store, in those things, right? You will have SLAs for your key business expectations as well. And your provider and yourself will be tied to those SLAs. KPIs. KPIs is what you'll talk to in many cases during your weekly ops reviews. These are key performance indicators. Is the process efficient? Are we answering the phone as fast as we said we would? Are we responding to the user in the time given? Are we repairing the system as fast as we can? Are we sending it new servers? Are we assigning new storage per the things we ought to do? Having those process efficiencies and having those discussions with each other are critical to understand gaps, to understand is information missing, are resources not responding, in those things. It just keeps the machine running very, very well. OLAs. Not many people know what an OLA is. It's an operational level agreement. It's amongst IT teams, especially when you outsource just a portion of your IT to one provider and you may outsource another portion of your IT to another provider. So now you have what we call 3 in a box. So you may have one firm doing applications, another firm doing infrastructure, and then you have obviously the enterprise IT. OLAs are a way to at least establish expectations from each other. So if someone has infrastructure, one organization, and it's late at night, infrastructure's a server goes down or is slow, they need to reach out to the other third party that's supporting applications. They need at least an OLA to say, hey, when I reach out to you, I either IM you, I text you, I email you, or I put the ticket into the ticketing system, you need to respond back to me in an appropriate amount of time, etc. Very simple, making sure that especially when it's a multi-party, multi-vendor operation, that OLAs are well understood by all parties to make sure that they at least have expectations and understand that they have to respond not just to the client, not to the person paying their bill, but also to the others that are delivering the IT service. So SLA, KPIs, and OLAs, they each all have their purpose, and then that's how, and just making sure you understand how to leverage them and how to use them to make sure that services are being delivering very, very effectively. Managing the business, very interesting. In an outsourcing agreement, a lot of times the noise starts with the business. It may not start with IT because you've built a good relationship with the provider, you think you're doing the right thing, but it's the business that will say, I don't like it, right? It'll be the business say, I was called by, or someone visited my desk, or I was emailed by, or I was trying to interact with, and I didn't like it. The one thing I'll say to the people on the phone is a good outsourcing agreement is the other terms I'll use in here is we're badgeless, right? Whether you're using one firm for infrastructure or one for applications or security services, that when we communicate or show ourselves to the business, whether through email, through text, through a desk site visit, we always try to force it to be representative of the IT enterprise organization. So we say we're badgeless. I've been in companies, you walk into the facility, you know exactly who the partners are because it'll say this area is where the name your provider sits. My view of the world and the best practice I've seen works better is when, no, this is where IT sits. So rebranding their email should be coming from your email system so that way they don't know if they're talking to or exchanging information with an enterprise employee or whether they're dealing with one of the providers. So one technology team, if something fails, it's not the provider's fault, it's the CTO's fault at the end of the day in that vernacular. Very important. Consistent communication, because a lot of change is happening, and this is not just at the start of the engagement of the outsourcing agreement, but this is also critical in the ongoing, right, is consistent communication with the business. So just think about it. The IT team is going through a lot of change. They may now have some of their roles pushed to the provider, or they're taking on new roles on how to manage the provider from being a developer or being a system administrator. So there's already a lot of change going on in IT. What you don't want to try to do is push that into the business. So that's why I mentioned earlier things like KPI and reporting. Reporting that's critical. What we report out to the business. How are we doing against SLA? How we're changing certain processes so that how you interact with IT, how you request services. That is really critical and consistent communication back to the business. I call it managing the business and managing business expectations. So if someone says to you, well, in the past I was able to walk down the hall and Joe employee helped me with my problem, you're telling me now I have to open a ticket. I don't know where it goes in those things. You also have to deal with change management with the business. So consciously manage the business and via that consistent communication, letting them know, yes, change is happening. You can now not go down the hall and ask Joe employee or Susie system administrator to do the work for you. You now have to open a ticket and those things. So change management and managing the business is as critical as managing the change that's going on within the IT organization. Again, like I said, this is continuum. So we kicked off this thing with this is a new relationship. We have what we call in a burn-in period to stabilization. Your agreements will say this, but in more reality, people just need to understand this and managing the business. People say, well, we changed providers and how come I'm not getting X? We allow people learning curve, right? We do things to make sure that knowledge transfer is occurring and effective. But we still allow what we call a burn-in period and before we move to stabilization. So understanding that and managing the business, say we're still in a burn-in period, it won't be perfect, but we are moving towards stabilization and we have metrics around that. So managing the business in these initial days of the relationship are important to know. It protects you, it protects the provider, and it protects the business from trying to, I'll say, generate a lot of noise back up to leadership and to the stakeholders. So managing that expectation of burn-in. You still have to be aware, though, that managing the business, you still allow them to escalate. So escalation and understanding how the business should escalate if services aren't provided and given their expectation. So understanding on how to escalate, when to escalate is as important as making sure they understand the burn-in period. So just a few bullet points there, but I think the takeaway here is learn to manage the business as well. Kind of towards the end of my last slide here, right? At the end of the day, you've got to continue to celebrate success, right? So just how do you do that, right? One is you have to treat your partner delivery teams as you would your own staff. So that's kind of the key takeaway here. I've seen a lot of relationship outsourcing agreements where they truly treat it as a third party, and I believe those become unhealthy. We do things like brand your delivery center. So let's give an example. Let's say you have a delivery center that the provider has a delivery center in Latin America. They're providing services to your organization in either Europe or the North America region. And that's kind of where some of the services are being delivered out of. We've done things like, it's pretty typical, that the leadership team, like I mentioned before, from the enterprise or from the company, go and visit the delivery center on a regular basis, get to know their people, get to know who the delivery leads are. That's what I mean by personal touch, right? We brand them. So many of the companies providers allow you to brand their delivery centers. So what does that mean? So let's just take an example. Provider X company has a campus in Latin America, and they have 15 staff supporting you. We go down and visit those 15 staff. We give them logos, we give them pens, we give them posters of the company that they're supporting, right? So we brand the delivery center within their organization so that other people know that delivery center is supporting services for X company in North America or in Europe or in Asia. It makes the people those 15 people in that delivery center feel part of you. So when they're talking to you or emailing the users or talking to their IT counterparts, they feel a little bit more connected, which is really important to keeping that delivery center feeling part of your team. Communicate and provide feedback as you would your own staff. Again, if they're not performing, great, tell them how they can improve. Just don't escalate it to their leaders to say it's not good. Be consistent, be specific, and I've seen them really perform. Having that feedback, and I'll say the next one, the positive feedback, recognize them. Teams that go visit delivery centers, we bring T-shirts, right? Or we bring things to recognize them or give little awards that we get positive feedback on. So recognize them as you would your own staff. The last thing I'll say, if you do all that, the core intent is you're competing for talent within that company. You want the other people in that company, of that provider, to work on your account. We're always telling our people, you're competing for talent, even within the provider. Even though you can say the provider, in the SOW, you're supposed to give me your top-notch people, which they do, right? But you either want to keep them, or you want to even attract better talent from the provider to your account. So I've gotten so much feedback when I visit delivery centers about how other employees, as they walk around, if they're supporting multiple clients out of that one delivery center, they say, I want to work for your account because it seems that you guys are really connected. You recognize them, you give them tchotchkes like pens and things like that, and give them awards, right? They're small, but they're very meaningful things because at the end of the day, you're also competing for talent. So celebrate the success of the relationship, treat them like you would your own staff. And I think at the end of the day, you will have, a higher performing vendor partner relationship, which can be looked back upon and saying that was a good thing that we did. It met the expectations. It met the reasons of why we did this from the various reasons I stated earlier. And you can engage with them in a much more honest way, right? And you can engage them in a way that, as we say in the trade, that the legal people don't have to help you, right? So again, that's it. I think that's my last slide. And you'll have to look at this whole deck of why I showed a cat and dog at the end, but then again, that's part of the entertainment value presenting through a webinar. And I want to thank you for your time. And I'd like to just maybe hand it back to either Arthur or to Darian to see if we need to take questions, or we can take questions as part of this webinar.
Hey, Iggy. One second. So anyone attending the webinar, feel free to ask him any questions. There's a questions chat box on the control panel and GoToWebinar that you should be able to see. Like a chat questions box. If you have questions for Iggy at all, please send them in. We're going to give you a minute or two, and we'll just wait it out. And if not, thanks for attending.
Iggy, I just want to say, this is Arthur. Thank you so much. It was an excellent presentation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Arthur, for the opportunity as well. Yeah, I don't see any questions coming in, so I don't know if I put them to sleep or they're still halfway through their lunch for those on the East Coast. So,
or in most likely case, they're multitasking.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay.
So yeah, we can close out. You can say goodbye. And close
Okay. Okay. I did get one question here, but thank you for the presentation from an individual. So I appreciate that. And obviously, Arthur and Darius, you know how to reach me. So again, thank you for the opportunity to present, and looking forward to getting additional feedback from you later on.
All right. Thank you so much, Iggy. And thank you all.
Hey, thanks, Iggy. And thanks for taking your time out.
Thanks. Thanks, Charlie. Bye.
Bye.